So, we've got Tiny XO, Faith number 1. We're back, baby. Hello everyone and welcome to Valiant Vlogs. And yes, we are back, hopefully permanently. So while trying to come up with ideas of what to talk about with the big return of Valiant Vlogs, an idea struck me when I was watching this video from YouTuber Sammy Reads. She's a great YouTuber, talks about comics every single week, or most of the time. She was talking about Divinity 2 and whether or not she should start reading that since she's never read anything Valiant related. And that's when I realized a lot of people haven't gotten into Valiant. And this series really should not just be for Valiant fans, it should be fans of all comics. And especially for fans that want to get into Valiant. So, that is why I present you with Daniel Adkins' Guide to Getting into Valiant Comics, as of April 2016. I'm going to go through all of the ongoing titles that Valiant currently has, talk about how you should get into them, whether you can jump on, or whether you need to go back and read all the issues, and how you should actually go back and read the previous issues. And then afterwards we'll talk about some of the series that have already ended that I think are really good. So, let's get started with XO Man of War. XO Man of War is the story of Eric of Dacia, a Roman-era barbarian who gets abducted by aliens, steals a living suit of power armor, and returns to Earth in the present. XO is the flagship title of the Valiant Universe, and so far it's the only one of the launch titles that is actually continuing to this day. Although it is ending this summer with issue 50. So, yeah. But if you still want to jump on it, there are a few ways to do it. What I'd say, if you're just dipping your toes in the Valiant water, you want to start with the trade paperbacks. Your average Valiant trade paperback will collect about 4 issues of the series, maybe some other stuff, maybe. And to help you out, every Valiant Volume 1 is only $10, so you're not spending a whole lot of money to get started. I highly recommend picking up the very first trade paperback by the sword, and if you like it, keep going. However, if you don't care about money, and you know you're ready to just dive in full force with Valiant, I have an alternative. These are deluxe editions. Valiant puts these out. They collect about 12 issues of every series. This one actually collects 14. And this is probably the best way to get the most bang for your buck. This collects the first 3 trade paperbacks, which cost about $45 in total. This only costs $40. However, on the other hand, it costs $40 and you're getting 12 issues. So I really don't know if that's the best thing if you're just starting out. But if you know you want to catch up on current Valiant, this is the thing for you. If not, though, I'd recommend just starting with the trades and buying one of those every couple weeks. Next up, Ninjak. Ninjak is Colin King, a wealthy British playboy who also happens to work for MI6 and is the most skilled assassin alive. He's basically James Bond meets Batman, only with an extra dash of ninja thrown in. And hey, you can always use more ninja. Ninjak's series is very standalone, and is actually notable for having more than one concurrent story going through. And as such, every issue is 40 pages long as opposed to the standard 32. But it still costs $3.99, so you're getting more bang for your buck. The only real exception to its standalone status is the third story arc, Operation Deadside, which reintroduces Shadow Man into the Valiant Universe. If you haven't read Shadow Man, I recommend skipping that arc. Skipping Operation Deadside, though, is pretty easy, and it doesn't really interrupt the story. All you have to do is buy the first 2 trade paperbacks, and then jump on with issue 14, which just came out last month. So, it's a pretty simple book, and it's awesome. Matt Kindt is a great writer, and he's done an amazing job with Ninjak in his career at Valiant. Next up, Bloodshot Reborn. Bloodshot Reborn is the sequel series to the original Bloodshot, about a cyborg soldier with nanites in his blood that give him all kinds of abilities. Bloodshot Reborn technically spun off of another series, a mini-series called The Valiant. It was a standalone story of 4 issues that was basically a jump-on point for new people to jump headfirst into the Valiant universe. However, I'd really recommend, if you want to, and if you're really interested in the character and have the money, go back and actually read the very first Bloodshot series. It was a great series, and I didn't really think I would like it, because I'm not really a fan of the whole, cyborg kind of thing. I mean, I like cyborgs, it's just, I just wasn't really going with what they were going with. But I found myself pleasantly surprised, and it was a great series. So I recommend reading that. If you don't want to read the original Bloodshot run, then just read the Valiant and pick up the first few trades of Bloodshot Reborn. Next up, Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. Gilad Anipada is the Eternal Warrior, the fist and steel of the earth. Whenever he falls, he comes back. This is his journey. Wrath of the Eternal Warrior takes place after the events of last year's Valiant event, Book of Death, which followed the aforementioned miniseries The Valiant. While reading those events isn't necessary, I do feel like they will help you get a better understanding of Gilad's character. So I would really say jump in with The Valiant and then read Book of Death if you want to check out The Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. And if you really don't want to do that, well then the first trade paperback will be releasing next month, I believe. Next up, let's talk about Gilad's brother with A&A, The Adventures of Archer and Armstrong. The Adventures of Archer and Armstrong is just like your average sitcom. One is a drunken, hedonistic 6,000-year-old immortal, and the other is a religious, moral 18-year-old assassin. Together they fight monsters, aliens, and the 1%. Now, while Archer and Armstrong did have a previous series, you will have no trouble jumping right into the new series. It's written by a completely different writer, has a very different art style, and while it builds on stuff from the previous series, it's really not enough to make it really a sequel. It's more just the next series. And I highly recommend Archer and Armstrong. It's awesome. Now, the first few issues are all that's come out so far, so I recommend just going through, getting 1 and 2 from your local comic book store. Now, if you find yourself really wanting more Archer and Armstrong after this, I highly, highly implore you to check out the original Archer and Armstrong run from 2012. It is fantastic, it's hilarious, it's emotional, and all around it's just awesome. They fight nunjas in the first arc. Nunjas! Non-ninjas! It's awesome! Love Archer and Armstrong. So check them out. Next up, the big girl herself, Faith. While the Faith miniseries is coming to a close, the ongoing is about to come out, so I figured we might as well just go ahead and talk about Faith. Faith was the breakout star of Harbinger, one of the original Valiant launch titles. Faith Herbert, aka Zephyr, is a psiot with the ability to fly. She's also a huge nerd. Following the events of Harbinger, she decides she's going to try the superhero thing one more time. I highly recommend the first Faith miniseries, as you can see. It's a great story, and it's being collected into Faith Volume 1, again, $9.99, so it's a very easy entry point. And if you find yourself loving Faith as much as I do, then I highly recommend checking out her original appearances in Harbinger. Harbinger's a little bit of a darker series, so I just want to warn you that going in compared to Faith. But Faith is the light that shines through, and she's amazing. You will love Harbinger if you love Faith. I know I certainly do. Speaking of Harbinger, though, Imperium. Imperium is the follow-up to Harbinger, focusing on the villain Toyo Harada after his Harbinger Foundation is ousted by the Harbinger Renegades. Unfortunately, this is a title that does not stand alone. At all, really. At least from my perspective. You might be able to jump in, but honestly, I'd say if you really want to read Imperium, the best way to do it is to read Harbinger. It's a fantastic series, it's really awesome, and it'll give you an understanding of who Toyo Harada is and why he's doing what he's doing in Imperium. So check out Harbinger, then go read Imperium. Next up, let's talk about Divinity 2, the entire reason we're even doing this video. Divinity 2 is the sequel to Divinity, and I don't want to give anything away about Divinity other than it follows a Soviet cosmonaut who goes to space and comes back with the powers of God. It's an incredible read, and you can read it right now for $10. Go do it. Then read Divinity 2. It's awesome. Do it. Right now. Lastly, let's tackle Rai. In the year 4001, the satellite nation of New Japan is a sprawling mega-metropolis governed by the benevolent artificial intelligence Father, and protected by Father's champion, Rai. If you're a fan of anime or cyberpunk dystopia, you owe it to yourself to read Rai. It's an amazing story, with writing by Matt Kent and art by painter Clayton Crane. It's an incredibly beautiful, complex story. The first 3 trade paperbacks have been released covering the first 12 issues, which have also been collected into a deluxe edition that I highly recommend you check out. And Rai forms the basis of the upcoming 4001 AD crossover storyline, which I am so looking forward to. It looks like it's going to be amazing. So check out Rai. However you want, check it out. Now let's talk about some titles that have already ended in the Valiant Universe, but I think you should still check out. First up, Harbinger. Harbinger is my favorite series. It follows Peter Stanchek, an Omega Harbinger with access to all of the psychic powers. After betraying the Harbinger Foundation, he recruits a team of renegades to take them down and take down their leader, Toyo Harada, his old master. It's an amazing book. It really explores something similar to X-Men, but in a way that I haven't really seen done, and it's a great book. Check it out. It's a bit more realistic, and I don't want to spoil too much, so I'll just say check it out. Shadow Man. Jack Boniface is the heir to a line of voodoo warriors that protect the world from the evil Master Dark. Now, Shadow Man's the biggest mystical Valiant book, so if you're a fan of that kind of stuff, I definitely recommend it. And it's entirely standalone. It doesn't do any crossovers of any kind, so it's a pretty easy book to just pick up and read. Quantum and Woody. Adopted brothers Eric and Woody Henderson hate each other, but can't leave each other's side without dying. They're pretty much stuck together, and it's pretty hilarious. It's superhero hilarity at its finest, and they have a super goat. Super goat. What more do you need? Go check it out. Archer and Armstrong. Seriously, read this book. It's awesome. Divinity. Communist spaceman God! What more do you need? The Valiant. The Valiant follows a few specific characters like Eternal Warrior, Geomancer, Bloodshot, etc. And it's a nice, good introductory story to the entire Valiant universe that just kind of throws you headfirst into the deep end. But it's a pretty good story, and I recommend checking it out if you want to. Well, that'll just about do it for this episode. If you enjoyed, thanks for watching. And let me know if you've gotten any Valiant books that you want to recommend to people, or if there's any Valiant books that I've talked about that you now want to go and check out. Leave a comment down below, and be sure to follow me on Twitter for more. I'm always on there, always talking about stuff, always talking comics, so be sure to check me out there. In the meantime, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you next time on Valiant Vlogs. Stay Valiant.